So I made some notes in this beautiful journal that my beautiful friend Tyler gifted me for Christmas, and I just think it's relevant to this topic. So, the relationship between FOMO and procrastination for me personally is an interesting discovery that I found. I looked around at my possessions and I was wondering like how I accumulated all this stuff. And I realized, well, I didn't realize, I already knew, but I just thought about the fact that I really am a things person. Like, I love jewelry, I love beauty products, I love like materials. I'll collect different things like scarves and random things. I just love things. I'm very Venusian. And I was like, oh my God, you have a lot of things. And it kind of made me anxious. And I asked myself, why does this make me anxious? And it's because I'm worried that I'm going to run out of things. Now, I never grew up lacking like fundamental things. I've been very fortunate enough to not have to worry about food or anything like that. So I don't know where that kind of came from at first. And then I kind of examined it a little bit more and I realized I've had so much uncertainty in my life. I've had the loss of things and I haven't been able to control a lot of situations. And that's why the way that I have found comfort is through collecting things. Because when you collect things, you can predict what's going to happen. You own that item, you own that possession, you get to say what happens to it, you get to say where it goes, you get to say how long you can use it, if you can keep it forever, if you don't want it anymore. It's completely and entirely up to you. There's no other person or thing involved, and generally speaking, it's not going to get taken from you. But we all know that's not true because anything can happen. But it's the illusion of thinking that wow, I have such control over this thing. And I have control issues when it comes to certain things. And I think my way of soothing myself and trying to keep something solid and stable in my life was collecting and accumulating things. And my brother always makes this joke that I have FOMO. Like, he always makes fun of me for having FOMO because if he goes places that I like, I'll go, oh my God, if you're ever over there, can you get me this thing? Or if I even think for a second he's gonna go somewhere that I might want something from, I will like harass him into getting something for me. And he always God bless him for putting up with me, but honestly, he always just makes jokes about me having FOMO, and that's why I need to put in an order for something in case somebody goes somewhere, or I get really upset when people leave me out of things, especially when I could have the opportunity to have gotten something. And it's because I have an anxiety of missing out on something, of not being able to get the opportunity to get something that's mine. And I've always self-soothed with material items. I've always self-soothed with being able to get something, whether it was I bought myself a meal or I bought myself like a little, I don't know, item, something. It doesn't have to cost a bunch of money. It wasn't about how much I spent. It was the fact that I bought something that for a moment brought me enjoyment, or I appreciated something about it. You know, like I'll buy artwork, I'll buy decor, random things that I just look at and I go, that makes me so happy. And it's like a serotonin, a bit of dopamine or something. And I think anybody that is materialistic to some extent can relate to that. I used buying things as a big soothing thing because I'm quite an anxious person and I was extremely anxious growing up. And I think the way that I soothed was leaning into the physical, material, sensory sort of things to bring me some type of reprieve or relievingness. Sorry, can't think of the word, but it would soothe me. And these things kind of do have a relationship. So here's the FOMO of, oh my God, you're going to leave me out of something, or I'm not going to be able to get the opportunity to get something because I'm afraid that one day I'll run out of all these things. One day they'll go. Because even though I know when I have the item, it's mine and I get to do what I can with it, a part of me still knows that it could get taken from me, it could break, someone could steal it. the house could burn down, I could lose everything. I want to make sure that I have more things, or have access to being able to get more things, like resources, even if it's food and ingredients. I get anxious about grocery shopping sometimes, and it's things that were happening in the background that I just did not even pay attention to or really realize, but it all has a relationship and it all kind of weaves in together. Let me just look at my notes real quick because I kind of forgot the point that I was trying to make. The point is, I think FOMO is control issues. I think it has to have something to do with control for people, because when I look at people that can't miss an event or a party or any sort of thing, it's because they're afraid that they're going to not be important, or they're not going to be there to be a part of a cool memory or get to reference something. It's obviously, there's nothing innately wrong with being worried about getting left out from group activities with people that you care about and people that you love. But there's this other level of FOMO that goes a bit too far, where you start stressing yourself out, where you start neglecting yourself because you're stretching yourself so thin in order to be everywhere and anywhere at any given moment. And I've seen a couple people in my life that have been really, really bad with this. And I think they're trying, the other part of this that isn't self-control is that I think it's chronic avoidance. And that's where procrastination comes in. I think they're chronically avoiding something, even if it's not like initially a control issue of trying to make sure that they're in charge, or that they know everything going on at all times and they can be involved in everything and not miss out on something. There's an element of control there, but it's also procrastination because they're running from something. If they sat for a second with themselves, why are you restless? There's something you don't want to deal with inside yourself. And I'm thinking of one person in particular in my life who no longer is in my life, but was a very restless individual. And I used to see them periodically have the same type of breakdown about feeling lost and feeling hopeless or feeling empty or whatever it was. It was always those types of themes. And they kept going on the go. Yes, they were a very adventurous person. They were very extroverted, and they liked to be active and be having fun and being with people. But it got to this extreme where it was such FOMO that it was a detriment to their health. They barely slept and they were stressed out all the time, and they didn't eat very well, and all sorts of things. And there's actually a couple other people that I can think of now in my personal life, but I'm not going to blow anybody's spot up. But anyway, it's a thing. It's really, you're procrastinating examining yourself. You're procrastinating sitting with something. And I think FOMO is a really good opportunity to ask yourself why you even have it. To sit with yourself, because anytime we're going through something that's uncomfortable or painful or scary, as much as we don't want to face it, it's a really beautiful opportunity to work on something gently. Don't dive into it head first if you really can't. If you can work with a professional, like a therapist or something like that, or a coach or whatever it is, that's also a really good option, because they can be a third party that's more objective and they're professional. They can guide you through that. They have experience. But if you don't have the ability to do that, or you are skeptical on that process, then it's really good to just start journaling or getting out the voice notes app and just talking to yourself. Like, why am I deathly afraid of missing out? Why am I deathly afraid of things running out? Why, what am I trying to avoid? Now that I'm sitting with myself and I'm anxious because I'm not doing things, or I'm not at that thing that I know is happening, or I can't get the thing that I want right now. Why? Is it because I can't control something? When was it in my life that I felt pained when I couldn't have been somewhere? Do you have a memory of when a bunch of your friends went somewhere and you didn't go there, and for weeks on end that's all they could talk about, and you felt like you didn't belong anymore? Did you miss out on being able to obtain some sort of item or whatever, and it actually was a big detriment to you because it affected your health, or it affected your access to something? Go back and examine where you remember really feeling that be a real problem that actually played out in your life, and revisit that memory, and then try to rewire yourself. Like, how can you comfort yourself into realizing that you don't lack anything right now? You have everything that you need. You have yourself, which is a gift because you've always had yourself. You've navigated yourself through every event in your life thus far. You're the one that's picked yourself up. Yes, you had support because we can't do everything alone. You know, a stranger might have offered a beautiful piece of advice, or your parents might have helped you out of a financial thing, or your friends could have carried you through something, or resources that you use that are outside of those things probably helped you. So it is a community thing, but you also have yourself. And I think it's important to start doing self work in that way and rewiring. Sorry, that was my dog shaking himself in the background. Rewiring yourself in some way. Like, I'll talk about myself and how I got through some of these discomforts. Is I started doing chakra work, right? So there's a book that I have called, let me just grab it. It's this book. It's Eastern Body, Western Mind. And I saw it in a bookshop like years ago. And I went, because I don't know, I just thought it was going to be one of those like books, but something kept drawing me back, and it actually is really practical. It's very practical, and the woman that wrote it, she uses the stuff that she teaches in this book in her actual practice. She's a therapist, and she uses somatic work, all types of work. Her work is very holistic, it's very diverse. She tailors things to her clients, to her patients. And essentially she walks through each chakra from root to crown and really, really, really gets into the physiology of it in your body. She gets into what that chakra deals with on an emotional level, a spiritual level, a physical level, and how things manifest when it's excessively expressing itself and when it's depleted and kind of numb or not as active, kind of repressed. And she explains how these things can come about, certain traumas in your life, certain events, a combination of how you were raised and cultural attitudes or familial attitudes surrounding the stuff that chakra deals with. And I started really studying it slowly. It's a book that I've devoured over and over a bunch of times in a non-linear way. Sometimes I just want to read about the third eye, or I want to read about the throat. And it can talk about physical illnesses and manifestations that happen in the body, and they can actually correlate with what's going on in your life. So at one point, I was working on my throat a lot, and the throat center is really about self-expression, not just vocally, but just in anything that you do. It's fundamental to creation. It's fundamental to all of them play out in your life all the time. You're working them all the time. But the throat chakra is one that really significantly ties in with everything else. And it really needs to be linked to everything else quite strongly. And when I was working through it, I was getting chronic sore throats and weird things happening in my throat as I was working through stuff. And events were playing out in my life where I had to really speak up for myself. And I really had to speak on things that had happened so long ago that I think had just gotten swept under the rug and no one was going to talk about it anymore. And it was kind of like dealt with, but it needed to come up because I had anger and resentment that had built and stored itself in my body, and it was coming up because of the work that I was doing, and I was being given opportunities during conflict and drama in order to finally address it. And when I started doing that, I was getting sore throats, but they were going away. It was very strange, and now I don't get them anymore. But I think it's important to work on your chakra system like that and get this book because it will really help. You'll probably cry a lot, and that's good because it's a release. You'll probably get angry. You'll probably feel overwhelming love. You'll feel grief. You'll feel shame. You'll feel guilt. You'll feel fear. And I think it's important to feel those things and to not run from it because that is just part of the process. It's expressing it, it's getting it out, but then it's like, okay, that was done. I'm going to leave it. It will come, it will go, and that's part of the process. It's a beautiful thing. So that's how you can kind of work on it when you start journaling about procrastination, about this FOMO thing, about control issues, because I think they all kind of work together. And there's something that I clicked for me very recently, was that relationship that they all have to each other and how they have it in my life. But you probably listening to this might be able to draw some parallels for yourself. Like, where do you have control issues? And do you have FOMO? And if you don't have FOMO, do you have control issues in some area? Even if you're a very go with the flow, blasé person, there's got to be somewhere in your life where you really feel like you need to hold on tight and control it or micromanage it. Maybe it's just within yourself because you can't allow other people into the process, or you're too ashamed of having that trait, so you only do it with yourself. Maybe you don't have that issue and you really are a control freak, and other people in your life would advocate and for that and say that you were. I think we all probably have a control issue somewhere. Some people have it worse than others, but just the way that life is set up, there's so many uncertain things that happen. There's things that we lose. There's things that change that we just don't get a say on, that we cannot control. And we will manically try to control something somewhere. If it's your body, it's your relationship to your body, and you micromanaging your weight or your body image. Like, these are really serious things. And I think taking a little bit of time to journal or talk to yourself or talk to a therapist about that, and just using a book like this to help you work through the issues. If it is something that is actually quite heavy, I really do recommend that you go and talk to somebody that is a professional. But that's a whole journey. I know for myself, like, I didn't go to therapy for a long time. I would go to one and see them for a tiny bit and then kind of leave because I would get really overwhelmed or really scared. And other times it was just because the person and I didn't click very well. I felt like they couldn't relate to my experience. A lot of things that I've had to talk about involve a lot of intersectionality, and sometimes I'd be talking to people that lived a very singular life, and I could tell that they probably wanted to help, but I couldn't really get a lot from them. And so I think it's a journey. I think just be gentle with yourself. When you hear this and you want to explore this topic, don't rush to fix it immediately, because that's not going to happen. I'm just going to tell you that now, it's not. But the epiphanies that you have and the fact that you're drawing parallels is already like such a huge step and a big leap. And be confident in the fact that you're already on the path, you're on the journey. And if this is something that you've already explored for yourself, take this as a sign that you're doing a good job, because I'm sure you are. Don't compare yourself to someone else's journey. Don't compare your story to someone else's. If you need to have a different path in order to get to the same destination of finding peace within yourself or peace for this issue, that's what you need to do. Who gives a fuck what other people are doing? As long as you're taking care of yourself and it works for you, then people can get fucked. So yeah, I think it's important to look for a practitioner that has experience in the issue that you are dealing with. If you have body dysmorphia or anything like an ED, eating disorder or things like that, or you have depression, anxiety, or any sort of mood disorder, personality disorder, something like that, look for people that are experienced in that, and be prepared to shop around a little bit. Just book a session with somebody and talk to them about their history too. You're interviewing them as well. They'll want to ask you why you came in. Tell them, be open, and then ask them like what they have experience in and what has been some of the highlights of their career, or what situation was difficult for them. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's okay to ask some of these questions because you want to find the right practitioner for yourself. You can ask them all sorts of questions that would make you more comfortable with them, and be prepared to have to see a few different people. And thankfully we live in an era where you can do kind of telehealth or Zoom conversations with people. You can call people and say, do you do Skype or Zoom? And a lot of people do, especially if you live in an area where you don't have access to people that as much wherever you live, or that deal with the issues that you are going through or that you've had to deal with. I myself have had therapy with people on Zoom, and it's been quite good. And yeah, I recommend it highly if you have a lot of trauma, if you deal with CPTSD like I do, even if you just have anxiety or something, and it's just so very overwhelming for you to work through your issues on your own, especially if you're very self-aware, which anyone watching these videos likely is self-aware and introspective. uh, you likely know what your issues are, and you likely are good at understanding yourself. Even if it's something new and foreign, you have kind of this way of getting to the bottom of things within yourself. It's more about learning how to maybe feel your emotions, rather than intellectualize them. And I can do a video on what that means and how to do that. If anybody's really interested, please let me know, because I think that's such an important thing, especially for us women. Um, but yeah, I think, what was I even saying? But anyway, as usual, please take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself. It's all a process, and it will be infinitely easier if you are gentle and kind to yourself and you don't rush the process, because it isn't linear. So I hope that you got something out of this video, and once again, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment if anything relevant came up in this video for you. I've linked my blog and my Substack down below if you prefer a writing format, and I hope to see you soon again under my videos. Thank you for being here.